When my daughter chose my wife's lover to walk her down the aisle, I didn't fight or argue. I just vanished along with the $43,000 I was spending on her wedding. What happened next made headlines in our town and turned me into a folk hero. This is how I lost my family and found my freedom. My name is Delbert Krause, though most folks call me Delaware. I'm 55 years old, and for the past 28 years, I've been running my own septic installation business here in Millbrook, Ohio. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, and it's kept my family comfortable. Real comfortable. Actually, when you're the guy who handles what nobody else wants to deal with, you can charge premium rates. Every new subdivision, every fancy house on the lake, they all need me eventually. I built this business from nothing. Started with a beat-up truck and a second-hand backhoe I bought auction. Now I've got 12 employees, 6 trucks, and enough equipment to handle any job in 3 counties. The irony isn't lost on me that I spent my life dealing with other people's waste only to discover I'd been living with it all along. The morning it all started to unravel was a Tuesday in March. I remember because I just finished reviewing the quarterly taxes with my accountant and the numbers were good. Real good. I was sitting in my home office going over the contracts for 2 new developments when I heard Wanda's car pull into the driveway. She'd been out with friends again, which had become her favorite excuse these past few years. "Del, honey, we need to talk," Wanda called from the kitchen, her voice carrying that tone I'd learned to dread. It wasn't angry or sad. It was the voice she used when she'd already made up her mind about something and was just going through the motions of pretending I had to say. I found her standing by the kitchen island, still wearing the dress she'd bought for what she claimed was a book club meeting. Funny thing about book clubs, they don't usually require designer dresses and fresh highlights, but I'd stopped asking questions about her activities months ago. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss, at least temporarily. "What's on your mind?" I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee from the pot she hadn't offered to share. Wanda fidgeted with her purse strap, avoiding my eyes. "It's about Brenna's wedding. She's made a decision about who's going to walk her down the aisle." My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. "Oh, she wants Clovis to do it," Wanda said quickly, like ripping off a bandage. "She thinks it would be meaningful. You know, since he's been such an important part of our lives lately. Clovis Beckham, my former business partner, my former best friend, the man who'd helped me build half of what I owned and apparently helped himself to my wife while he was at it." I sent my coffee mug down real careful, like the way you handle dynamite. 24 years of raising Brenna, 24 years of dance recital and scraped knees and bedtime stories, and this is what it came down to. My daughter wanted my former best friend, the man who'd been sleeping with her mother, to walk her down the aisle at the wedding I was paying for. "I see," I said finally, my voice steady as concrete. Wanda must have expected yelling tears, maybe me storming out. Instead, I just nodded and walked back to my office. I heard her call after me, something about how I could still come to the wedding if I wanted, like she was doing me some kind of favor, like I was a distant relative instead of the man who changed Brenna's diapers and taught her how to ride a bike. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The wedding budget spreadsheet was still up from earlier, $43,000 and counting. Venue, catering, flowers, music, photographer. Every line item paid for with money I'd earned crawling through mud and dealing with the worst jobs nobody else wanted. My daughter invited my wife's lover to her wedding. I said nothing. I just removed my name from everything I funded. First, I called the venue. "Hi, this is Del Krause. I need to cancel the wedding reception for Brenna Krause scheduled for June 15th. The coordinator sounded confused. "Cancel? But sir, we have everything confirmed. The deposit's been paid." "The deposit stays with you," I interrupted, "but I'm withdrawing all future payments. Send the cancellation notice to the bride directly." Next was the caterer. Same conversation, same result. Then the florist, the photographer of the band. Each call was surgical, professional, no emotion, no explanation beyond services no longer required. I pulled up my banking app and started moving money. The wedding account I'd set up empty within 10 minutes. Everything transferred back to my business savings. The check I'd written for Brenna's dress that morning. I called the bank and put a stop payment on it. By the time Wanda knocked on my office door an hour later, I'd systematically dismantled every aspect of the wedding I'd been funding. "Del, what are you doing in there?" she asked through the door. "Just some bookkeeping," I replied, reviewing my handiwork. $43,000 worth of canceled contracts and stop payments. Not bad for an hour's work. "You're being childish," Wanda said, her voice taking on that sharp edge she used when things weren't going her way. I opened the door and looked at her, really looked at her. When had she become a stranger? Childish would be making a scene. I said calmly, this is just practical. If Clovis wants to play father of the bride, he can pay for the privilege. Her face went white. You can't just cancel everything. People are counting on Dash. People should have thought about that before, I said, and closed the door again. What happened after would make headlines in our entire town, but that was still coming. That evening, I sat in my workshop behind the house, staring at the old photos tacked to my bulletin board. There's one of me and Clovis from 15 years ago, both of us grinning like idiots after landing our first big commercial contract. We'd been partners then, 50-50 split on everything. Clovis handled the business side while I ran the cruise. We were going to conquer the world together. Another photo showed Brenna at 8 years old sitting on my excavator wearing my hard hat, which was way too big for her head. She'd begged me bring her to a job site that day. Wanted to see Daddy's big truck in action. I taught her how to operate the controls, her small hands guided by mine. She'd been so proud, told everyone at school her daddy could move mountains. I pulled out the file cabinet's bottom drawer and found what I was looking for. The partnership dissolution papers for 5 years ago. That's when I bought Clovis out. Paid him $200,000 for his half of the business. I thought we were parting as friends. He'd said he wanted to explore other opportunities, needed a change of pace. Turns out his opportunity was my wife. The papers were still in the manila envelope along with something else I'd forgotten about. A receipt for the fishing cabin I bought in Kentucky last year. I told Wanda it was a business investment, potential rental property. Really? It was my insurance policy. A man needs a place to go when everything falls apart. I heard footsteps on a gravel outside. Brenna's voice carried through the workshop door. Dad, Mom said you're being unreasonable about the wedding. I opened the door to find my daughter standing there in her work scrubs. She was a dental hygienist at the clinic downtown. She looked tired, frustrated, and younger than her 24 years. Come in, I said, gesturing to the folding chair beside my workbench. Brenna sat down and looked around the workshop and my tools. The photos, the evidence of 30 years building something for nothing. Dad, I know this is weird, but Clovis has been really good to me. When you and Mom were fighting all the time, he listened. He gave me advice about college, about boys, Dash, about how to betray your father. I asked quietly. Her face flushed. It's not betrayal, it's just complicated. Mom loves him, and I've gotten used to having him around. He feels like family now. And what am I? You're my dad. You'll always be my dad. But you've been so distant lately, so angry. Clovis makes Mom happy in a way she hasn't been in years. I nodded slowly. And that's worth more than 24 years of me providing for this family. Worth more than the $43,000 I was spending on your wedding was. Her voice faltered. I can let everything this afternoon, I said matter-of-factly. If Clovis want to walk you down the aisle, he can pay for the privilege. Brenna's eyes went wide. Dad, you can't be serious. Dead serious. You made your choice, sweetheart. Now you get to live with it. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. First call was from the venue coordinator, panic in her voice. Mr. Kraus, we've received your cancellation, but the bride is saying it's a mistake. She's quite upset and Dash. No mistake, I said, pouring my coffee. The contract is canceled. Send all future correspondence to the bride. Second call was from Brenna, crying. Dad, please, we can work this out. Maybe Clovis and you could both walk me down the aisle. I'm not sharing that honor with the man who destroyed my marriage. I replied calmly. You picked him. Stick with your choice. Third call was from Wanda, furious. Dell, you're embarrassing our daughter. People are going to think we're white trash. People are going to think whatever they want. I said maybe they'll think a man finally drew a line in the sand. By noon, word was spreading through town like wildfire. Milberg's got maybe 8,000 people and half of them knew our business by lunchtime. The septic industry is tight-knit. Everybody knows everybody. My phone kept buzzing with texts from other contractors. Heard about the wedding situation. Good for you, Delaware. About time someone stood up to these cheating wives. Always respected you, but this takes guts. The calls that really mattered came that afternoon. My lawyer, Jim Patterson, called around 3. Dell, I heard what happened. You need to protect yourself legally. If you're planning any major financial moves, we should talk. What kind of moves? I asked, though I already had ideas. Property transfers, business assets, anything Wanda might try to claim in a divorce, because that's where this is heading, isn't it? I thought about the fishing cabin, about the business I'd built, about everything I'd worked for. Yeah, Jim, I think it is. Come in tomorrow. We'll make sure you're protected. The last call of the day came from Clovis himself. His voice was tight, nervous. Dell, we need to talk. This whole thing's gotten out of hand, has it? I asked. Look, I never meant for it to happen this way, Wanda and I. It just evolved. But there's no reason to punish Brenna for our mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Clovis, you knew exactly what you were doing. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? The partnership dissolution, moving in on my wife, turning my daughter against me. This isn't a mistake. It's a hostile takeover. Silence on the other end. If you want to pay for the wedding, be my guest. I continued, but you're not getting my money and my blessing. Pick one. I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow I was going fishing. I left town at dawn the next morning, truck loaded with gear and a cooler full of beer. The drive to Kentucky took 4 hours, long enough to clear my head and think about what came next. The cabin sat on 12 acres of woods bordering a private lake, the kind of place where a man could disappear for weeks if he needed to. The previous owner had been a widower who'd built the place as a retreat after his wife died. Solid construction, solar panels, a well-stocked workshop, everything a man needed to start over. I bought it sight unseen based on photos and a recommendation from my banker, but seeing it in person, I knew I'd made the right choice. My phone had been buzzing constantly during the drive, text after text from Wanda, Brenna, even some mutual friends trying to play peacemaker. I turned it off and tossed it in a drawer. Whatever crisis was brewing back home could wait. The lake was perfect, clear water, no development on the far shore, and according to the locals, full of bass and catfish. I spent the afternoon on the dock, casting lines and not thinking about anything except the rhythm of the water and the weight of the rod in my hands. That evening, I fired up the grill and cooked the 2 bass I'd caught, seasoning them with herb from the little garden the previous owner had left behind. No fancy restaurant meal had ever tasted better. This was what peace felt like, simple, quiet, and entirely my own. I call my neighbor back home, old Pete Morrison, to check on my place. Dell, your phone's been ringing off the hook, Pete said with a chuckle. Juana has been driving up and down the street looking for your truck. Seems mighty worked up about something. I'm sure she is. Everything's secure at the house, locked up tight. Though, I did see Clovis's truck in your driveway yesterday evening. Figured you should know. Appreciate it. Pete, I'll be back in a few days. Take your time, son. Sometimes a man needs to get away from the noise. The next morning brought a text from an unknown number. When I finally checked my phone, I found a photo that made me smile. Me on the dock holding up a nice bass, grinning like I didn't have care in the world. The message was from Danny Walsh, a contractor friend who'd driven down to drop off some equipment at a nearby job site. Saw you living your best life. The text read, mind if I share this? Folks back home are wondering where you disappeared to. Go ahead. I texted back, let them see what freedom looks like. Within an hour, that photo was all over Facebook. Me, peaceful and happy. While back home, the wedding drama was probably reaching a fever pitch. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. 3 days of fishing, thinking, and planning gave me exactly what I needed: clarity. I drove back to Millbrook with a cooler full of fish and a head full of strategy. The first stop was my lawyer's office. Jim Patterson had news for me. Dell, I've been fielding calls all week. One has hired an attorney and they're talking about contesting the wedding cancellations, claiming you acted without proper authority. Good luck with that, I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Every contract was in my name, paid with my money. What authority did I need beyond that? Exactly what I told them. But there's something else. Clovis came to see me yesterday. Want to know about buying the septic business? I laughed out loud. Buying it with what money? That's what I asked him. Turns out he's been talking to investors, trying to put together a group to make an offer. He seems to think you're desperate to sell. Not desperate, but if the price is right, I'll let the idea hang in the air. What kind of offer? 5 million, cash deal, close in 30 days. I whistled low. The business was worth at least 4 million, but 2.5 would set me up for life, especially if I didn't have to split it with anyone in a divorce. Counter 3 million, I said, and I want a non-compete clause that covers the entire state of Ohio. You serious about this? Dead serious. Let Clovis have the business. He'll run into the ground within 2 years, and I'll be sitting pretty in Kentucky, watching from a distance. The drive home took me past the church where the wedding was supposed to happen. Cars were parked outside and I could see people gathering on the front steps, Looked like some kind of emergency meeting. I slowed down enough to see Brenna standing next to Clovis, both of them gesticulating wildly at a small crowd of what I assumed were wedding guests or vendors. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Brenna's number. Dad, where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. Fishing, I said simply. Caught some nice ones, too. Dad, please, we need to talk. The whole wedding is falling apart. None of the vendors will work with us because you canceled everything. Mom's having panic attacks and Clovis is trying to fix it. But he doesn't have the money to fix it. I finish for her. Funny how that works. Dad, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll uninvite Clovis. I'll ask you to walk me down the aisle. Whatever you want. Just please don't let my wedding be ruined because of this. I sat in my truck looking at the house I'd bought, the lawn I'd maintained, the life I'd built. Sweetheart, your wedding isn't being ruined because of this. Your wedding is being ruined because of the choices you and your mother made. I'm just the consequence. That's not fair. Fair? I almost laughed. Was it fair when you decided to replace me with the man who's been sleeping with your mother? Was it fair when neither of you bothered to consider my feelings before making this decision? You want to talk about fair? Let's start there. The silence stretched between us until she finally whispered, I didn't know it would hurt you this much. Well, now you do. And now you know what choices cost. The Millburg Gazette ran the story on Thursday morning. Front page above the fold. Local wedding cancelled after father withdraws support with a subheading that made me chuckle. Bride chooses mother's boyfriend over dad. Loses funding. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading every word when my phone started buzzing like an angry hornet. The reporter, a young woman named Sarah Mills, had done her homework. She'd interviewed the vendors, gotten quotes from neighbors, even tracked down some of my employees. The article painted a clear picture. Devoted father funds daughter's wedding, gets replaced by mother's affair partner, quietly withdraws support, and disappears. What happened after made headlines in our entire town just like I predicted, but seeing it in black and white still felt surreal. The phone calls started immediately. First was Channel 7 News from Columbus wanting an interview, then a blogger from some men's rights website, then a reporter from a national newspaper who'd seen the story trending on social media. I declined them all. A man doesn't need to explain his dignity to strangers, but the local response was something else entirely. My phone rang constantly with support from other contractors, neighbors, even guys I barely knew from the Rotary Club. Dell, this is Frank Morrison from Morrison Excavating. Just wanted you to know what you did took guts. Real guts. Always respected you. Dell, but this proves what kind of man you are. About time someone stood up to these modern women who think they can have their cake and eat it, too. The most interesting call came from Clovis himself around noon. His voice was strained. Desperate. Dell, this newspaper thing has gotten way out of hand. People are calling me everything but a gentleman. My business phone's been ringing off the hook with cancellations. That's a shame, I said, not meaning it at all. Look, we need to work something out. Brenna's beside herself. One has had to take time off work because people keep staring at her. This whole thing's become a circus. Whose fault is that? Come on, Delaware. We're both grown men. We both made mistakes, but there's no reason to drag the kids into it. Kids, I laughed. Clovis, Bren is 24 years old. She made an adult choice, and now she gets to live with adult consequences. Same as you. I'll pay you back for the wedding expenses. Every penny. With what money? Last I heard, you were living off unemployment and whatever side jobs you could scrape up. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. I sold my truck, he finally admitted, and I took out a loan against my tools. I can cover maybe half of what you spent. Keep your money. Clovis, you're going to need it more than I will. What's that supposed to mean? I thought about the business sale, about the cabin in Kentucky, about the new life I was building while his old one crumbled around him. Nothing you need to worry about. Good luck with the wedding. That evening, I drove to Donnie's bar, the place where contractors and working men gathered after long days. I hadn't been there in months, but tonight felt like the right time to show my face. The moment I walked in, the place went quiet. Then Mike Donnelly himself called out from behind the bar, Del Kraus, man of the hour. The whole place erupted in applause. Grown men, tough guys who've been building and fixing things their whole lives, stood up and clapped like I just won the World Series. First beers on the house, Mike announced. For the man who finally showed these modern women what backbone looks like. I spent 3 hours there talking with guys I'd known for decades, hearing stories about their own divorces, their own betrayals, their own moments when they'd had to choose between dignity and convenience. Every one of them said the same thing. I'd done what they wished they'd had the courage to do. Friday morning brought a call from Jim Patterson with news about Clovis's purchase offer. He's desperate. Delegate came in yesterday with a cashier's check for $500,000 as a down payment. Says he can get the rest within 60 days if you'll agree to seller financing. Seller financing? I almost choked on my coffee. He want me to loan him the money to buy my own business. That's about the size of it. His credit's apparently shot and no bank will touch him for a loan this big. But he's got investors lined up. He says silent partners who believe in his vision. I thought about it while I drove to the office. Clovis, desperate to prove he could provide for Wanda and Brenna, betting everything on a business he'd helped build, but never truly understood. The septic industry isn't just about digging holes and laying pipe. It's about relationships, reputation, regulatory compliance, things that take years to develop and minutes to destroy. Counter with this, I told Jim when I called him back. $3 million cash, 30-day close, no seller financing, no contingencies, and I want a 5-year non-compete that covers Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. He'll never agree to those terms. Then he doesn't really want it. But Clovis did agree, which told me everything I needed to know about how desperate he'd become. Whatever investors he'd found, they had deep pockets and poor judgment. The signing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. I spent the weekend going through my office, boxing up personal items and anything I want to take to Kentucky. 28 years of building something from nothing, and it all fit in 6 cardboard boxes. Monday brought another surprise. Brenna showed up in my office unannounced and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. I'm always honest with you. Sweetheart, did you sell the business to punish me? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she gotten so thin? When had those worry lines appeared around her eyes? No, I said finally. I sold the business because it was time. Because I'm 55 years old and I've been crawling through mud and fixing other people's problems for almost 30 years. Because I wanted to do something different with whatever time I've left. But why to Clovis? You know, he doesn't know how to run a company. That's not my problem anymore. If he fails, that's between him and his investors. Brenna sat down in the chair across from my desk. The same chair where she used to do homework while I worked late. Mom says, "You're moving to Kentucky. That's the plan. What about me? What about our family?" I leaned back in my chair, studying the woman my little girl had become. Honey, you made it clear that Clovis is your family now. You chose him over me, remember? I'm just accepting your choice. I was wrong. She whispered, I see that now. The wedding's falling apart. Clovis is stressed all the time. And Mom's realizing that living with him isn't a fantasy she thought it would be. And what do you want me to do about that? I want my dad back. I want to fix this. I stood up and walked around the desk, then sat on the edge so I was closer to her. Brenna, some things can't be fixed. Some choices have permanent consequences. You hurt me deeper than I thought possible, and I can't just pretend that didn't happen. So, this is it. You're just going to disappear and pretend you never had a daughter. I'm going to live my life on my own terms for the first time in decades. If you want to be part of that life, you're welcome, but it'll be in Kentucky. And it'll be on the understanding that I'm not the same man who used to bend over backward to make everyone else happy. She cried then, really cried, and for a moment, I was tempted to comfort her the way I used to when she was small, but that man was gone and we both needed to accept it. The business transfer closed on a rainy Wednesday morning in Jim Patterson's office. Clovis looked nervous, sweating through his one good suit, while 3 men in expensive clothes handled the paperwork. His mysterious investors turn out to be a group from Columbus who specialized in buying distressed businesses. They had that predatory look of vultures circling wounded prey. Congratulations, I said to Clovis as we shook hands after signing the final documents. Hope it works out for you. His grip was weak, clammy. Thanks, Delaware. I'll take good care of the business. I'm sure you will. I walked out of that office $3 million richer in 30 years later. The septic business that had defined my adult life now belonged to someone else. For the first time since I was 25, I had no employees to manage, no schedules to maintain, no pipes to fix. The feeling was intoxicating. That afternoon, I loaded my truck with the last boxes from my office and drove straight to Kentucky. The cabin felt different now, not like a retreat, but like home. I spent the evening on the dock fishing and planning. $3 million in the bank, no debt, no obligations. A man could live very well on the interest alone. My phone rang around sunset. Brenna, Dad, the wedding's officially. Clovis can't afford to replace what you can let in. Mom's having some kind of breakdown. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. And minute. I never wanted Brenna to be hurt. Just wanted her to understand that choices have consequences. Tanner's family is furious. They flew in from Oregon, paid for hotels, took time off work. His mother called me yesterday screaming about how embarrassing this whole situation is. What does Tanner think? He's relieved actually. Says he's been having second thoughts. Anyway, turns out getting married at 26 to someone whose family's in complete chaos wasn't his dream scenario. I almost smiled. Maybe the kid had more sense than I'd given him credit for. So, what happens now? I don't know. Clovis moved out yesterday after Mom found out about some property he'd been hiding from her. Apparently, he owes the IRS a bunch of money and there's some kind of investigation. Elena had been busy. Good for her. And your mother? She's talking about selling the house. Maybe moving to Florida to live with her sister. Says there's nothing left for her here. And you? Long pause. I was hoping maybe I could come visit you sometime in Kentucky if that's okay. I looked out over the lake, watching the sunset paint the water gold and red. You're always welcome, Brenna. But understand, things are different now. I'm different now. I know. I'm hoping maybe I can be different, too. We talked for another hour. Really talked for the first time in years. She told me about her job, her dreams, her regrets. I told her about the cabin, about the peace I'd found, about the life I was building without bitterness or anger. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. 6 months later, I was sitting on my dock reading the morning paper when my neighbor Pete called from Ohio. Dell, thought you want to know. Clovis's business went under. Closed the doors yesterday. That was fast. Faster than anyone expected. Turns out those investors were loan sharks. When he couldn't make the payments, they foreclosed on everything. Equipment's being auctioned off next week. I felt a moment of satisfaction, followed quickly by something that might have been pity. Clovis had gotten exactly what he'd asked for, my business, and promptly destroyed it through inexperience and greed. What's he doing now? Word is he's driving truck for a company out of Dayton. Long haul stuff gone most of the time. And Wanda moved to Florida 3 months ago. House sold to some family from Columbus. Never did see her after the day the moving truck showed up. After Pete hung up, I sat in the morning quiet, thinking about the life I'd left behind. A year ago, I'd been a married man with a thriving business and a daughter who loved me. Now, I was alone on a lake in Kentucky, and somehow that felt like the better deal. My phone buzzed with a text from Brenna. She'd been visiting every few weeks, helping me fix up the cabin, learning to fish, rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time, coming down Friday for the weekend, bringing someone I want you to meet. I texted back, someone special, very special. His name's Marcus. He's a teacher and he treats me the way you always treated Mom before everything went wrong. I smiled, genuinely happy for her. Brenna had learned something valuable from watching our family fall apart. How to recognize a good man when she found one. That evening, I called my lawyer to discuss setting up a trust fund for any future grandchildren. $3 million properly invested could provide for a lot of college educations and wedding funds. But this time, I'd make sure the money came with conditions about respect, loyalty, and understanding the difference between love and convenience. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, I reflected on what I'd learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building a better life and letting other people's poor choices destroy them naturally. I'd lost a wife and nearly lost a daughter, but I found something more valuable: peace. And in a world full of noise and chaos and people demanding things they hadn't earned, peace was worth everything I'd given up to get it. The bass were biting, the beer was cold, and tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. For the first time in decades, that was enough.